Hello folks, I hope that you're having just a great and safe day and keeping yourself safe in our modern COVID-19 world. Today I want to take a look at Joel Rosenberg. I want to add him to the canon of authors that I'm reviewing for you. I want to take a look at my favorite book of his and the one where I think he transcends the genre and really writes something that I think really helps to really sort of reach out. And that's this book here, Deshae, which is an Asian influenced world, which we'll be taking a deeper look into in just a moment. But first, who is Joel Rosenberg? Well, he's this author. He wrote some science fiction, but he was mainly known for his fantasy. Probably his best known work is the Guardians of the Flame series, which has a gaming group of people are sent to the world in the characters that they have into this fantasy world, and then they have to survive in this fantasy world, and they make changes to it. They don't like slavery, so they fight against slavery. They bring gunpowder in because they know how to make it. They are more like their real life people that they're trying to get away from than they are like their characters, and that's what they're going to turn into moving forward. So that'll become, and so they'll change the world in a few different ways. There's about 12 books in that series. I've got 8 of them, and I've read at least the first 4 or 5 at least 2 or 3 times each, and I enjoy it, but there's some limitations to it. Joel Rosenberg is perfectly competent as a writer, but he's never going to be somebody that you're going to just say, "Oh my God, Joel Rosenberg is the best writer I've ever read." Right? He's never going to be somebody you're going to go to the mattresses for. You're not going to go to war over him, and so forth. At least I'm not. He's competent. You know, I've enjoyed his stuff enough to go back to it, but he's just competent for the most part, except for Deshae. I think Deshae is his magnus opus. Deshae is an Asian-themed fantasy world that has magic in each person, and these people have there's I think more than 30 of them if I remember correctly. And they are various professional style of their profession, what their job is, based magics based around those. So each person's profession will give them a different set of magics, and then you got the ideas that you try to find your passion in life by finding what you're good at magically, and that's your profession, and so forth. It's just incredibly well written, incredibly detailed, incredibly well done. The world cares a lot about things like etiquette and so forth, and status and station, as opposed to more traditional sort of high fantasy style things. And so there's a lot of great things that are going to happen in this. The prologue of this hooked me. It's 5 pages in. It goes over the way of the runner, one of the professions and their magic and so forth. So what I want to do for you today, since it's only 5 pages long and I want to give you a feel for just how strong this is, I figured I'd read it for you. So let's go ahead and get started. Let me go ahead and go to page 1, and I'll go ahead and get started with you. Page 1, prologue, the way of the runner. Begin with a secret. Balance is the way of the runner. Attention to balance is all. The rest will fall into place. Balance is not just the way of the runner, it is the way of Deshae. It was time to be going. "I thank you, innkeeper of Oled," Duerny Draven said, taking an oblong coin from his pouch. The thin coin was of dull copper, patinaed with age. He laid it on the smooth wood in pavement. Old Adon, the keeper of the Scion's Inn, who had spent part of the previous hour sharing gossip with Duerny Draven, fell silent. It was commonplace to chat with a customer. It was another thing entirely to leave oneself open to an accusation that one had interfered with a runner. Duerny Draven stood easily, his weight balanced as he hefted the half-empty tankard of bitter ale. He swallowed quickly, eating like a runner, before he exited through the dust curtains and into the golden morning. He had taken food and ale, and now it was time to be on his way before the spirits of the ale prevented him from raising Keza. Once he had raised Keza, nothing but his own will or his death would drop it. Balance is the way of the runner. The others of the 52 Kazan had their own ways. None could understand his. It wasn't speed, although it was a face a Keza runner turned to the public. A lie. Speed is the way of the runner. The truth and the runner's secret, the balance creates the speed. Speed was the effect, not the cause. Balance is the way of the runner. Duerny Draven, seventh of his line, knelt on the cold dirt facing morning-wise, letting the rising sun's red warmth wash over him in gentle benediction. His twin packets of dispatches were, like his purse, already bound tightly to the belt around his waist and tied firmly to his thighs. Other than the twisted cotton low tie about his loins, the belt was to be his only garment. He stripped off his tunic, rose to one knee to unfasten his right sandal, then his left, then took the 3 steps forward, leaving his tunic and sandals behind him, ritually leaving everything except his duty and his running behind him. Tense muscles already loosened in anticipation, he bent forward in the first of the 9 stretches that would protect his tendons and muscles during his running. The first hour of the day was the hour of the clock, and the first stretch was of the hamstring that existed so soften the impact of the balls of his feet. The clattering of a horse's hooves interrupted his meditations. He turned to see a great white beast thundering through the town, passing him on the edge to town. The red stripe diagonally across the rider's snow-white tunic told him that the horseman was one of the minor nobles of Lord Nerona's court, out for a morning canter. And while not even Lord Nerona himself would dare to interfere with a runner in the performance of his duties, there was no penalty for distracting him, a different matter entirely. Duerny Draven returned to his meditations. There were 9, each named for an hour of the day. Sometimes it was hard to concentrate, to push the world aside. He found himself noticing the clattering of hooves off in the distance, and the wind on his body, and the sun in his hair. "Powers that be," he said quickly in the runner's prayer. "A Keza runner faces you. Let me raise Keza and be on my way, for I have duties to perform." The words were important, of course, but the attitude, the way, was all. He rose in the meditation of the first and second hours, the hours of the cock and of the hare, stretched the hamstrings, like a cock rising to announce the first hour of the day, and like a hare kicking out its leg before bounding into flight. Meditation of the third hour, the hour of the horse, he tossed his head on his long neck, loosened the muscles that balanced his head. Meditation of the fourth hour, the hour of the ox, leaning forward as through pulling a plow, he tightened then eased the strong shoulders, the shoulders that would support his pumping arms. Fifth and sixth meditations, the octopus and snake whirl the arms from the wrists to the shoulders, first gently, loosely, bonelessly, then swiftly, sharply, like a striking snake. Seventh and eighth, the bear and lion, squatting spraddle-legged, he moved his body from one side to the other, stretching the muscles of his thighs, the pillars that supported the moving body, then leaped up, springing high into the air like a cat bringing down a bird. Ninth and last, for the hour of the dragon, the hour before dawn. Like a dragon breathing frost, he expanded and contracted his chest, the temple that held the breath and the balance of the runner. Breath was everything in the running, although as nothing in the running. Duerny Draven set off in a slow walk, leaving meditations like his outer clothing behind him. He knew that the innkeeper would launder and oil his linen and leather, making them clean and ready for his next time in the OLED. He stopped himself. He was letting his mind wander, and his mind must not be allowed to wander. Gently, he nudged his thoughts back to his running. The technique came first. Keep the walk deliberately slow for the first league, ignoring the muscles that protested the languorous pace. He walked, slowly, carefully, precisely. Form was everything. Step, step, step. His feet needed to jog, to run, to fly, but he kept his pace slow. Step, step, step. After the first league, he let himself break into a brisk walk, and then took that to a light jog, concentrating on the land and roll of his feet, letting the heel take up the shock. The road was cold and dirty, but empty of pebbles. Wheels and Borlarna were forbidden on Deshanian roads, by order of the Scion of the Sky himself. Lined by watching elms, the road clove straight through the golden fields toward the dark forest ahead. There it would twist and turn. Here it was simple and direct. His jog became a trot, his breath beginning to catch in his lungs. Still, he was running from the outside, not raising Keza. Never mind, he thought. Never mind. never the mind. The balance, not the mind. Balance is the way of the runner. He sought to land easily, letting his body flow forward, not lurching as his speed increased, his pistoning arms and legs pumping as fast as the thrum, thrum, thrum of his heart. No matter, all was a matter of balance. He would hold himself in a sprint until he raised Keza or died, or both, in the runner's death. Gradually he staggered from balance to balance, became a flow, always in equilibrium, each step a combination of the previous one, no longer discrete. Still his lungs burned with distant fire. Each moment became more painful than the last, but Dwayne Draven did not concentrate on speed. Speed is nothing but the effect of balance, of form, of the flow of arms and legs, of the deep breath and the full release, of the inhaling and the exhaling, and then flaring together in mind and body like sudden fire from stirred ashes. The familiar miracle happened. Dwayne Draven raised Keza. The needs of his body became distinct and vague, not non-existent, merely irrelevant. His body and legs seemingly slowed, moving with an exquisite, deliberate languor, but the rest of the universe had slowed even more from the corner of his eye. He glimpsed a red bird hanging in the air, its wings flapping lazily as it climbed into the sky. But it was unimportant. Its glossy black and fiery crimson faded, as did the blue of the sky, the cool green and warm brown of the watching elms, the black spotted yellow of the daisies lining the wheat fields, until they were all pallid ghosts of themselves. Smells, too, went vague and distant. They, too, were unimportant. Birds, trees, roads, fields, arms, legs, lungs, they were all insignificant. The running was not important. The running was all. He ran, and at the center of the running and at the center of Dwayne Draven there was quiet peace, untouched by the movement of arms, legs, buoyed by the slow intake and release of the unimportant air. Dwayne Draven ran. And when he passed the cantering horse and rider, only a small part of him could smile. There was, as always, not enough for it to reach his face. He reached Den Arashtai in the hour of the snake, and the dirt still pounding beneath his feet. Hours of running were behind him, as was the forest, as were leagues of the fields and paddles surrounding Den Arashtai. His running was almost at an end. Ahead, the guard station of the lower town loomed, gray and vague as the limits of his perception. The danger was always to bypass his destination, to continue running. It was the runner's death, the way his father had died, and his father, and his, all the way back to the beginning of the line. The runner's death, to run across the land until the last threads of flesh and bone broke, leaving the spirit to race across to Shai forever. Oh, that would be a wonderful thing. That was always a temptation, to leave blood and bone behind. But no, not now. Dwayne Draven's time was not yet, so he dropped Keza and let the world come back. He staggered up to the guard station, each step an agony of bruised muscles and battered bones. He became aware that he was panting, his breath ragged and painful, almost sobbing like a proud but beaten child. His heart pounded, although the pounding was already beginning to slow as he dropped into a walk. His naked body was covered with sweat and with dirt as he tottered to the guard post, and the waistband of his low tie was painfully dank against his belly. Out of breath, he knelt at the guard post, handing over the package of dispatches to the waiting guard captain, who examined the contents before handing it off to a rider. "Runner, do you need anything?" the guard captain asked, his silver voice holding the purity and clarity that sounds always did when they became significant again. "Water, Captain," he gasped out, "for drink and for washing. Then rest, then food, then more rest. The local keeper of the Scion's Inn would have linen and leather." "Show him, Herval." The chunky guard reached out a hand to help him, then drew it back. "A runner walks by himself." As he was led away towards the local tavern, the guard captain grunted. "I don't suppose that he'd have killed himself running if he'd known that all we had were some broadsides about an acrobatic trip." Dwayne Draven chuckled. They didn't understand. They couldn't understand. The dispatches didn't matter. Lord Toshtai didn't matter. Birds and fields and fire didn't matter. Balance is the way of the runner. And that's the prelude. 5 pages in. Again, I read that and I was hooked. I was in. This is Joel Rosenberg at his best. He is writing, he is on fire, and so forth. And I hope you can see that. And I hope you enjoyed me taking a little bit of a deep dive into this novel for you, because you probably haven't heard of it. It's probably not on your radar in any major ways. So I wanted to do that for you today. So I'll go ahead and leave it to you there. Have you read Deshad? What'd you think about it? Have you read anything else by Joel Rosenberg? And so forth. I'm happy to engage you with it further. If you liked this video, please feel encouraged to hit that subscribe button. There's going to be so many more of these classics to follow in fantasy, science fiction, and horror. And finally, I want to thank you for taking some time out of your day and watching my videos. We all have so many things happening in our lives, right? So the fact that you spent this time with me is incredibly humbling, and I really do appreciate that. So thanks again, and have a great day.